Shane Van Gisbergen has put a whole new meaning into a NASCAR road course ringer, as he has just absolutely dominated the road courses over the last few years in the Cup Series. But road course ringers aren't really a new thing. There are some drivers that have been very solid on the road courses, picked especially for those road courses, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. But it's just going to be from the next-gen car era, and this first video will just be from the first ever year of the next-gen in 2022. There were a good amount of road course ringers in 2022. This will not include AJ Allmendinger because he was full-time in NASCAR for forever, but eventually down the line this will include Shane Van Gisbergen, obviously. But let's get straight into it with our first road course ringer in 2022. Now, our first road course ringer from that year we'll talk about is actually Joey Hand. So Joey Hand is a Rolex 24 winner. He's a current IMSA driver for Ford as well. He actually raced for Rick Ware Racing, I believe, in 2021, but returned it back in 2022 to race the next-gen car, the number 15 for Rick Ware. He did all 6 road course races that season in the Cup Series for Rick Ware Racing in the 15 car. He actually was a damn good qualifier. He qualified 9th at Road America that season, but the finishes weren't really the best. I mean, it is to be expected. He's obviously not a NASCAR driver, and he's in Rick Ware Racing equipment. He did get a top 20 that season at Sonoma by finishing in 20th place, of course. So it wasn't actually a bad effort for Joey Hand. I mean, the next-gen car, we've seen that lately. It is more like a sports car on the road courses, I guess you can say. Not really that close, but it's more like a sports car than what you say the Xfinity car or the Gen 6. We last saw him in NASCAR actually last year for Ryan Sieg Racing in the Xfinity Series at Portland. The last time we saw him in the Cup Series was 2024 at the Chicago Street Race. Joey Hand was actually running really well at Watkins Glen in 2022, actually trying to pass Truex until he spun out and hit the tire barriers, as you can see. But still, it really proved that he was a pretty solid NASCAR driver overall. Joey Hand in 2026 is still currently racing in IMSA for Ford and GTD, and I definitely would love to see him come back to NASCAR to make maybe some Cup starts, who knows, or maybe an O'Reilly start or two yet again. Moving on, we go now to Connor Daly, who made his NASCAR Cup Series debut in 2022 at the Charlotte Roval with the Money Team Racing, which I feel like we haven't seen in a little bit, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, Connor Daly, of course, his first ever Cup race. He was actually doing some Xfinity races that season. Connor Daly, of course, is an IndyCar driver currently and was an IndyCar driver at that time. Did a lot of Indy 500s. And I guess even though the Money Team was probably the slowest team in NASCAR and they were part-time, he decided that it was a perfect opportunity for him to make his Cup debut. The Charlotte Roval was his only start that season, where he finished 34th, which isn't awful, but it's obviously not good. He did actually finish the race, didn't DNF or anything. He did actually have this little incident in practice where it wasn't really his fault. Something broke in the car and then went straight into the wall, and luckily they were able to repair the car and make the race. Now, Connor actually did return to Floyd Mayweather's NASCAR team, the Money Team, in 2023 and did 2 races, the Daytona 500, where of course he had to race his way in and actually made the race, finished 29th there, and also raced at COTA for his final NASCAR start to date, finishing 36th with a DNF at Circuit of the Americas. Now, our next one is probably the most anticipated one in this video and the most known. This is also before a very important driver got into this race car the next year, but this is, of course, Kimi Raikkonen's number 91 Trackhouse Project 91 car that he ran at Watkins Glen in 2022. Kimi Raikkonen came from F1. He, of course, is a Formula 1 world champion with Ferrari. Obviously, a huge name in the racing world, and it was just a huge deal for him to come to NASCAR in the Cup Series that season at Watkins Glen, and probably was the most anticipated debut of that 2022 Cup Series season. Now, he did actually make starts early in the 2010s and 2011 in the Truck Series and the Nationwide Series, but this, of course, was his first time in the Cup Series. So all eyes in the racing world were on NASCAR to see how Kimi Raikkonen would do, and that race, of course, was still filled with a lot of ringers that we've even talked about in this video and other people we still have yet to talk about. Unfortunately, his debut wouldn't exactly go to plan, as because of his very nice teammate Ross Chastain, he would end up crashing out of the race while actually running pretty decently, but of course that ended his Cup Series debut in the 91 car with a wreck at Watkins Glen. Raikkonen actually would return for the Cup Series in 2023 in the 91 car yet again at Circuit of the Americas early that year and would finish in 29th place in that race, marking his final start in NASCAR to date. Now, this next one is just a driver that's a road course ringer, also a team that's a road course ringer. Team Hezeberg and Loris Hezemans, of course, made starts in the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series. They kind of came out of nowhere, were teamed up with Riem Brothers Racing from the Truck Series. They were announced late in 2021 saying they would go part-time in 2022, with plans to actually race full-time in 2023. Spoiler alert, that never actually happened and they never actually made a start after 2022. But they made their debut in the 2022 Daytona 500, actually making the race with Formula One driver Jacques Villeneuve. He's not going to be the main driver of this because it technically wasn't at a road course. But after finishing a solid 22nd in the Daytona 500 with Villeneuve, he actually never made another start for the team, so they assigned Hezeberg to race at Circuit of the Americas. He came home with a 34th place finish that race in the 27 car. He then made even more road course starts at Road America and the Indianapolis road course, finishing in 37th, both times in the 27 Ford Mustang. But before that Indianapolis road course race, the team announced something that was pretty insane. It was that former Formula One driver Daly would be racing in their brand new second car for the Indy road course, which by the way was a Toyota when their main car was a Ford. This is still to this day the only NASCAR Cup Series team in the next-gen era to run two different manufacturers in the exact same race. Kvyat, of course, made his debut in the 26 car at the Indy road course that year. He made it until about 20 to go. Then, unfortunately, something in the suspension would break, and he ultimately would DNF and finish in 36th place in his debut. They would both return to Watkins Glen that season and would both finish bottom 30. They would do basically the same thing at the Charlotte Roval for their final starts of the year, and then would kind of just fade off into existence, and we haven't seen either Hezeberg, Kvyat, or the Hezeberg team in the Cup Series since the Roval in 2022. Now, moving on, we go to a current team, Spire Motorsports, that actually still exists. This is back when they were running their 77 car part-time and had a bunch of different star drivers in it. Mike Rockenfeller, who was an IMSA driver, actually drove the 77 car in his Cup Series debut at Watkins Glen International that season, being yet another road course ringer. He would ultimately finish in 30th place in that race. Mike Rockenfeller was actually part of the team that won the Rolex 24 overall back in 2010, so he definitely had some great road course experience and victories to go along with it coming into NASCAR. Mike Rockenfeller also got signed to race at the Charlotte Roval that season, finishing in 29th place. This is back when Spire really didn't have the speed they had today. They've really just come on strong in the last 2 years, I would say, at this point. So Rockenfeller wasn't really expected to do great. Obviously, not great NASCAR experience and not great equipment, but he did an okay job. He made an unexpected return to NASCAR in 2023 in the Cup Series for Legacy Motor Club when Noah Gragson was suspended. Josh Berry did all the oval races during that time. Gragson got suspended, but Rockenfeller was signed for the road course races, actually 3 of them, Indy, Watkins Glen, and the Charlotte Roval, finishing actually a best of 19th at Watkins Glen. Had better pace and better finishes in this 42 car. Unfortunately, we haven't seen him since in NASCAR, but he is still racing in IMSA. Now, Andy Lally was already kind of a long-time NASCAR driver when he returned to the Cup Series in 2022. He only did one race for BJ McLeod, Live Fast Motorsports at Circuit of the Americas. He ultimately would DNF and come home with a 39th place finish for his one and only Cup start that year for Live Fast. He would actually do a lot of Xfinity starts that year for SS Greenlight Racing at the road courses, and also would return to the Cup Series in 2023 with Rick Ware Racing. Now, the 2022 COTA race was also the place where Boris said would make his final ever NASCAR start. He technically is also a road course ringer because he's very good at these kind of tracks. He would race for MBM Motorsports in the 66 car, would ultimately finish in 36th place, and it would be his final NASCAR Cup start. Now, Boris said in 2024 actually would have the opportunity to drive a Hendrick car in the Xfinity Series, but as you can tell from this picture, it really didn't go so well at 61 years old. Now, before we get to our last ringer of this season from 2022 in Cup, I want to talk about one of the cars that actually was supposed to be on these road courses, but never showed up in NASCAR ever. This was Team Stange Racing and Carso Marquez, if I'm saying his name right. They planned to make 8 starts in 2022 in their Ford Mustang number 79 car. Now, they also were supposed to do a truck race that season as well, but they just never showed up to the track at all in NASCAR in 2022. Not once. We didn't hear a word from them, and last time I heard they're racing in some different series, I completely forgot about NASCAR, so I have no idea what happened here. Maybe I'll make a separate video on this if I find more information, but just a really weird circumstance with this team. Now, our last road course ringer from 2022 that we have to talk about is Kyle Tilley, another one from Live Fast Racing. Now, Kyle had done some IMSA races in the past, mostly in LMP2, and he also raced in NASCAR back in 2021 for Live Fast, so it did make sense for him to get the call up yet again for that 2022 season with the brand new next-gen car. Tilley made 2 NASCAR Cup Series starts that season at Road America and Watkins Glen, and other than a practice crash, as you can see right here, at the Watkins Glen International, he was pretty clean, kept the car okay, had 1 DNF, I think mechanical at the Glen, and then ultimately finished in 30th at Road America. Now, Tilley hasn't made a NASCAR start since the 2022 season with Live Fast in the Cup Series, and currently right now competes in some sports car races around the world. And that'll do it for the first year of NASCAR Road Course Ringers in 2022 for the next-gen car. Of course, there were an absolute ton of them, but there are still a lot more to come in the coming years, which will be a different video coming up next in 2023, and then we'll do 24, 25. And then eventually, if there is any, probably for this year, 2026, when the year is over for more NASCAR Road Course Ringers. But that'll just about do it for today's video, and I will see you guys next time.